Okay, hi everyone. We are in the room for the panel on all hair textures and skin tones, and we are desegregating the beauty industry. And so we have the most amazing panel, and they really need no introduction. But in case you've been living under a rock, let me walk you through who we've got. We have the go-to hairstylist in Hollywood, Larry Sims. Hey, Larry, how are you?
Hey, everybody.
Amazing. We have the renowned makeup artist, Joanna Simkin.
Yay.
Hi.
Joanna.
And the one and only, the VP of Talent Relations at BET, Natasha DesRuisseaux.
Thank you.
Natasha.
Hi. And in case you don't know me, I'm the one with the British accent. I'm Katrina Barton.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. So we are in for a really exciting panel. There are going to be moments that it's going to be uncomfortable. And guess what? We're going to push through regardless. We're going to do it because this conversation has to be had. So what we're going to be talking about is really in the beauty industry, there is a misconception that Black stylists and artists can only do textured hair and darker skin complexions, and that white artists can only do white clients, and similar with non-BIPOC artists as well. And that's something that we know in this room, right? But there might be a lot of people watching that don't know that, or don't know to the fullest limitations. And actually, those misconceptions can be really dangerous and really damaging, and can lead to missed opportunities. It can lead to talent not being showcased their skill sets correctly, or even to their growth. And so I'm really going to let you guys demystify how we navigate that space, how we deconstruct, and how really you guys have embraced your roles as the leaders in the industry to do that. So no pressure. But Larry, we're going to start with you. And of course, I say your name in a British accent. So Larry, we're going to drop some gems right now. I'd love to know how you broke into the industry, but also who was your first celebrity client?
Yeah, it's so funny that you asked me that because I'm obviously a Black hairstylist, and my first big celebrity client was Victoria Beckham, and the era of the bob. And you know, a lot of people.
There we go. Do we close the room now? Like mic swap?
Don't tell me you can give me that cut, Larry.
Yeah, it was crazy because I really came off of being assistant to Ken Pavis, who really gave me the opportunity to even be in front of Victoria. He wasn't available. He was out working with J-Lo, and he sent me, and you know, we created like a whole moment with each other. And for me, as a new artist breaking into the industry with Victoria, as being like my first person, everybody was wondering who the Black boy was that was running around with the Beckhams, right? And you know, I started getting requests for interviews, Vanity Fair, all of the big publications that never knew my name. And I remember sort of like, you know, getting my first agent at the time. And, you know, we talked about where I wanted to go in my career. People started to call me after that. Definitely a lot of Black actresses and musicians started to call. But I also wanted to make sure that I was being marketed as a hairstylist that could do everything. So, you know, with Victoria being obviously who she is, my agents at the time had this idea to call a bunch of white publicists, have me do their hair for free, and just to show them that I'm capable of doing somebody other than Victoria, so that they can maybe open up opportunities for me to work with their clients. So I did a day of beauty. I got pimped out. I didn't get one phone call from that day that I worked on all of those publicists. And, you know, I mean, look, I embrace that I'm the textured hair guy. I'm the guy that, you know, has been able to work with so many beautiful actresses and entertainers with textured hair. But it was a missed opportunity for me to only really be able to have that with Victoria and nobody else.
Right. And I heard two things in what you just shared there. And thank you so much for sharing. I mean, firstly, what a break into the industry. I mean, you just arrived, right? But
Yeah.
then you had to go through so many hurdles that stylists or people that look like me would never have had to go through. And that's part of the normality and the journey for stylists of color, right?
1,000%. That's what they said to me. They said to me, you know, well, yeah, we see that he's worked with Victoria, but we see pictures of Eve, and we see pictures of Christina Milian, and all of these other women with textures, which dominated my book at the time. And they're like, oh no, let's, you know, we'll give him a shot, but you know, he needs to, you know, make sure that he can, you know, coif my hair first. And I was the only person in the agency that had to go through sort of trying to prove that I can give somebody a good blowout or a good style or a good cut. When to me, I don't know if anybody else agrees on the panel, African American hair, textured hair is way more difficult to work with. I'm not going to diminish what type of skill set you need to be able to work with all types of hair, you know, that isn't textured. But at the same time, I felt like it was almost an insult that I wouldn't be able to know how to style anybody else's hair other than.
Right, that part. Exactly. And to you, Joanna, you're known for doing an array of faces. How did you refine your craft so that you could do all complexions?
I got my start when I started doing makeup. I started in music videos, which was, I just tell people, like, if you're going to start doing makeup, it's such a great training ground to just jump in and, you know, aside from, you know, learning set etiquette and learning speed and you sort of are given generally, you know, an array of women generally, like dancers, background, whoever they are. And a lot of times for videos, it's like, hey, we want them all to have like a smoky eye, or they gotta all look like vampires, but or it's like a zombie, but they're dancing or whatever it is. And you know, and it's a speed turnover thing. So just sort of like that repetition of like going back and be like, how am I executing this creative on 10 different skin tones, 10 different eye shapes, 10 different lip sizes and shapes and cheekbones and all that. And I always say like a music video is like where you're going to learn how to sort of do that. And then sort of on the flip, I started getting into grooming that way because it was, you know, I was shooting a lot of like rap videos or like Trey Songz or people like that. And it was giving me an opportunity to just sort of because you have more time with the star than the background. And it was just sort of like starting to like really understand and like look at skin and see different tones and different complexions and take a step back and think like the way that we're taught to do makeup by the beauty industry, reframing that because it's clearly, you know, if everything is being taught with Eurocentric beauty as the standard, that is the skill set that all artists sort of take into it. Is like you go to a makeup school, you go to makeup class, like everyone sort of is just taught how to do this look that is the coveted look and this is how you shoot a Vogue cover and this is how you do makeup. And it's really there is such a difference of deeper skin tones just have so much more natural dimension, and understanding how to honor that and the style of makeup that you would do on like my complexion or your complexion, Katrina, is just it's a different thing because you sort of have to give us dimension rather than just sort of honoring the dimension that's already there. Yes. And I always think about like the way that sort of also like informs just the whole beauty industry and the makeup industry as a whole, because there's this sort of standard that was set as like, this is how you do makeup. And then you got this whole sort of like crew of makeup artists who know how to do makeup this way. And then it's just such an interesting thing. I always think about like the Kardashians as being sort of those like definers of what makes makeup now. And I remember like the first time I saw Kim Kardashian like 10 years ago, whenever she was famous, I thought, wow, she does her makeup the way I do Black women. Like she gives herself this dimension. And I'm not even saying like, oh, they stole the Black thing and they ran with it. I'm like, they can't control what people write about them. However, it's fascinating to me that like that look, which is clearly Black women makeup, in my opinion, and I'm sure panel would agree that's like how you do a Black girl, like dimension, brighter, deeper, and that has now become the look that has informed not only like makeup trends on Instagram, it informs what's on the cover of a magazine. It informs what brands create. Everyone wants highlight and contour. Everyone wants this. And I'm like, it's just such an interesting thing to sort of trace it back to, you know, the faces on the magazine being what informs the whole industry. And those faces generally are white faces that are using Black styles, if that makes sense. And I think it's such an interesting path to follow of like trend forecasting for makeup. And I've kind of gone a roundabout way, but I think it's just such an interesting path to take to get to where we end up as, this is a makeup trend, this is the look, these are the products people want to buy. And meanwhile, you know, people that can excel in brown skin have just been doing it that way always, but those weren't always the women on the covers of the magazine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yes to all of that. And you've touched on so many really important points there, from honoring dimension and actually honoring the culture and not just having this white default that we're so used to seeing. And, you know, I just think this is exactly what this summit is about. And obviously there's going to be lots of more conversations on pretty much everything you've touched on. So thank you so much for taking us there, because this conversation needed to go there and is going there. And I appreciate you sharing. And so, Natasha, we're going to jump right in.
Right, let's go.
Let's go. Let's do this. So there can be a view that Black talent and Black models can be a monolith, right? How, I mean, we know, as in we know in this room, that there's such a large spectrum of textures and skin tones. How do you navigate that when you're working with talent?
So I have the fortunate opportunity to work for BET, which is Black Entertainment Television. So it's inherent. We know, right? Like when they choose directors, when they hire hair and makeup people. But I didn't always work there, and so I would have to put myself in these situations even before I was an executive. I would have to tell other executives, white males, other white, you know, hey, this person needs a Black or someone that understands texture, that understands hair, you know, that understands that this shade makes them look gray and ashy, as opposed to working with their tones to get that best, you know, lighting and so forth. And it was always a conversation. And, you know, I remember just having to convince an executive, you know, he was just like, why is this person requesting their, you know, another hair and makeup person? And I was like, well, they're not being difficult, but you know, you got to understand, as a Black woman, she wants to know that this person is going to make her look her best. So, I mean, and this was, like I said, like 15 years ago, and I was this assistant explaining this to people. And then it's been me consistently just always dropping the seeds when I can. And, you know, like I said, now, like I said, I am fortunate to be in a place where we have a plethora of skin tones and textures and so forth. And the people that work with us know how to work with those kind of talent.
Right. And again, so many layers to that conversation, and feel free to chime in, guys. But, you know, ultimately that's not your job on set, right? Your job is not to educate the people in the decision-making chairs that tend to look like myself, tend to be white executives. And ultimately, again, another beauty of this summit is so people can learn and educate themselves and do better, but also, you know, have some accountability in that. People that look like me need to hold themselves accountable and make sure that that situation is never set up or perpetuated. Exactly. Where we're having to rely on, you know, people of color on set to remind people how to do their jobs.
No, right, absolutely. And it's really comes down to conversation and asking the right questions. So as you look at when, you know, a show is hiring or they've cast a show or an ad or whatever, you know, you have to look at the spectrum of the talent that you have there, and then ask the question while you're hiring hair and makeup people, like, how well versed are they? What does their portfolio say? Have they ever touched this, and have they ever done that? And even if they may not, like, have a conversation with their manager or their agent and say, look, we have 3 Black women, different tones, this and that. I see, you know, your client has worked with like particular group or, you know, white women only. Do they know how to do makeup for Black women? Do they know? And then if so, can you show me? Like, it really is questions and just having that dialogue. And if they don't, then you're just like, well, you know, this is where people have to make those decisions and say, well, we need people that know how to do everybody or can work with this group, and give me the next crop that you have that know how to do this.
Mhm.
Exactly, that part there. And
but
that
sometimes those people aren't available to you, right? Because like those are also not the artists that are getting signed to agencies that are from your pool to pull from, and it's not for their lack of talent, just for the lack of visibility, which is totally unfair.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, I know people that, I mean, to your point, Joanna, that are super talented, that aren't Black, that know how to work with textured hair, that know how to work with, you know, darker tones, but obviously don't get the opportunities because they don't have the representation. They don't have, you know, the access to the jobs, which is why Black Beauty roster is going to be great for so many people, because there will be a roster of people that will be informed about, hopefully, jobs that the roster will know about and provide opportunities to.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And circling back to your point earlier, Larry, where you said, you know, for such a long time, you were kind of essentially put in a box that you could only do textured hair. And that was really like your only remit. How did you navigate that? Did you embrace it, or did you look for opportunities to really redefine what you stood for, and also redefine the stylists and artists coming behind you, what they stand for also?
Right. So, I mean, at first, I definitely wanted to be, I think about, you know, my friend Ted Gibson, right? You know, we love Ted Gibson. Ted has been able to navigate through both sides of the spectrum in a brilliant way. And, you know, he's done very well for himself for a very long time. I think the majority of his clients probably are Caucasian, but, you know, when we worked with Lapita together, you know, he's worked with texture. He's a Black man, so he obviously knows texture. And, you know, I mirrored my goals after where he sort of was able to, where his sweet spot was in his career, because I thought that he was more universal. And I'm using quotation in the most respectful way because I love Ted. But what I had to realize is that everybody has their pocket. And my pocket definitely is being able to crown beautiful, you know, brown and Black women with textured hairstyles. That's my strong suit. That's what I'm known for. That's what, you know, I've definitely leaned into. And, you know, I've ran with it and have celebrated it and have made it my business to make sure that I create really cool, definitive, inspiring styles that other Black and brown women with textured hair can be inspired by. Down to me doing America's Got Talent with Gabrielle, who is a part of this summit as well. We used, you know, the biggest stage in America as far as TV competition shows are concerned to showcase, we call it bliggity Black hairstyles, hairstyles that we were inspired by from the hood, you know, and we brought them to the big TV screens. And, you know, I know that everybody knows about, you know, the interminglings that happen with all of that, that, you know, I won't go into, but I'm just saying, like, I really wanted to make sure that I use my platform and my opportunities to make sure that, you know, Black texture, you know, always shines.
Mm-hmm.
Amen to that.
And you do it amazingly. I love working with Larry, you guys. I love working with him.
The Larry fan club in here.
I appreciate it, y'all.
It's really important, isn't it? And that message to pass on to other artists is yes, the expectation is that you do need to be able to do all skin tones and all hair types, but then you can still honor your craft and the piece that you're really, really good at, and find that balance so that you still can have your own name and what you're known for. I love that.
Absolutely.
See, dropping gems the whole way. And Joanna, this is a subject that's, I could talk to you for hours on, and everybody in this room, I'm sure that we could. It's 2021, and we still have talent, predominantly, Black talent and talent of color, saying that makeup artists don't have their shades. Why?
It's unbelievable to me. There's not even an excuse. Every brand that launches, I think like Fenty sort of set a trend, even though like actually NARS really did this first, but like Fenty just had such a big rollout. Every brand has 30 to 40 foundation. You can't even launch foundation unless you have 30 to 40 shades. Like, what are you even launching if you don't have 30 to 40 shades at this point? So all the foundation that matters has 30 to 40 shades. I don't understand how you just don't have. Also, aside from that, maybe you can't afford 40 shades. I get that. Aside from like, a lot of brands make small artist kits, which maybe people don't know, but you can buy artist kits from brands, which are mini bottles of multiple shades. However, if you even call yourself, like using the word artist to me means that you have an understanding of color mixing, how light works with color, how light works with texture. That you're an artist and this is your craft, right? So you know this. So I don't even understand how you can have someone in your chair and really just be befuddled and not know what to do if you're calling yourself an artist. I see the colors and the tones that are there as an artist, and I honor them and embrace them and celebrate them with colors from palettes and bottles. And I mean, this is literally what being an artist is. And I truly do not understand when I hear about talent getting to set and saying that artists don't have their shades. The place that I hear that it happens a lot, I feel like it doesn't happen so much now on editorial and backstage. I think people are coming around to that, and when you work with celebrity, obviously that you just start getting a big kit by default. I hear it a lot in production and union makeup artists, and this is not a knock on union makeup artists, because I think like if you're in the union and you're doing shows and that's what you're working on, it's amazing. But I think like what can happen there is if people are on a show, if you're on 5 seasons of a show and you have this talent that looks like this, it's like you might even be able to make the one Black woman on the show look amazing, and then when other people sit down, they're like, what happened? And I'm like, you have to understand, like, if you're doing one person over and over, like, I hope that person looks amazing after 5 years, right? Like, I hope you've perfected it. However, if you're not accustomed to it and the people aren't sitting in your chair, then maybe you are thrown for a loop. But then it's just your responsibility as someone who has said, this is my career, to figure that out. You have to pull a friend, pull anybody, go on Instagram and go into models' DMs and say, hey, I want to play. And like, you have to figure that out, because it's just absolutely insane to me that in 2021, after we've had all these conversations, I mean, it was insane to me 10 years ago. I'm not gonna lie. It was insane to me 10 years ago. People couldn't do it. It's insane to me now that you don't have the colors and you don't know how to make the colors as an artist. It just makes no sense.
Agreed.
Exactly. Yeah, we so agree. And it's like, to your point of what you were saying of coming through the beauty schools and what you get taught and trained in, to then coming into the union and what you're used to doing.
Yeah.
And I think the key word that you've said there is responsibility. It is the responsibility on people that look like you and I to go and upskill themselves. And it is also not the responsibility of Black people to teach them that.
Absolutely.
That is our job and our responsibilities, and we all need that along with accountability. Right. And I think those two things are the real key that we're going to learn throughout this summit, for people coming here and learning as a safe space to come and learn so that we can make better decisions moving forward, but to understand responsibility and accountability. And they are different.
They are.
Yes.
And it's like also interesting, because I think like there's like people's worlds look like them generally, right? Like whatever your world looks like is what your world looks like. And, I happen to be in a world where I am the minority in my circle of friends and family and employment. However, I think like, people might be into me like, well, cool. Okay, maybe you live in like a place where, I mean, I really would not want to hear this from anyone who lives in like a New York City or any other kind of metropolitan area, but maybe you're like, I don't know anyone that doesn't look like me. How can I practice? But I'm like, it's not an indictment on your character that you don't, if you're in an area where really everyone kind of looks like you, but I cannot imagine that there's literally nobody. If you're in makeup school, if you're in college, if you have a job in the world, I'm like, and I guarantee you, if you're like a budding makeup artist and you have a coworker, a friend, a fellow student, a colleague, and you're like, hey, I kind of want to play in makeup. Do you want to come do it? I do not know a lot of women that are going to be like, no, I'm good. Like any of those women that you know in your life are going to be like, yes, let's play. And you can learn and you can perfect that face and understand the nuance and understand the different tones that you see and understand the features that you're working on. And it's just, like, there are so many opportunities to find someone that doesn't look like you. And I mean, I guess maybe it is kind of an indictment for me that you don't know people that don't look like you. I also think that's weird, but like, I'm going to give people passes for like maybe where they live, but that's weird to me. I mean,
that's okay. We can have that conversation on another panel and another summit, because it's its own conversation, right?
I 100% agree with you, Joanna. I mean, it's there's so many opportunities. I mean, even kids in, film school, it's the same kind of concept and principle. Like, you want to be a writer, you want to be a director, you want to be a producer, you find people that are in that are kind of into it, and you start asking the questions, right? You go and you're just like, hey, I'm producing this thing, but I need a director. And I feel it's the same, especially nowadays with social media. I mean, you can just say, I'm looking for 10 people that I'm building my thing. I need 10 people. These are the different shades, or these are the different hair textures that I'm looking for. I want to work. People are going to raise their hand and say, yeah, sure, I'll help you. I'll do it. So yes, I agree. It's baffling how to someone to say, I don't know, I can't, I have no opportunity. They're just like, no, there's 50 million opportunities to.
Especially to your point with the internet. Like, come on.
Yeah. Just throw it out there. Just throw out a cast and people will catch that net and then they will help you. And if you and then also being very transparent. I've never worked on a black makeup before. I really don't understand. I'm going to try these shades. I want to test them out. And the person who's on the chair is going to say to you, yeah, that doesn't work with me. It's green. I'm more yellow, as you can see,
and
right?
They're probably going to say, here's the 2 colors I use. And then you as an artist can look at them and say, oh, so there's like a golden color you put in the middle of your face and it's a little warmer on the out. Oh, ask those, but like to your point, like work at that level that you're at before you try to step into like, backstage at the trailers and the model's looking at you crazy. Like, you don't have my color.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I always try to give people advice. I get people that, slide into my DMs all the time. And, I love that because they are taking an initiative, taking a step to trying to figure it out, how to gain an opportunity, any words of advice, and I always tell people sort of like what I did, it's like, seek out the best in the business, seek out people that inspire you. You know what I mean? Seek out people whose success you want to emulate and tap on their shoulders. And you'd be surprised at how many people would give you an opportunity to become a sponge. I was running around and I was carrying Ken's bags. I would pack them up for him. I would pack wigs up for him. He, had me on a shoot one day randomly and he was like, hand me the Mason Pearson brush, Larry. I put out a Denman brush. He said, no, the Mason Pearson. I put out a paddle brush. He's like, no, the Mason Pearson. That's when I first learned what the Mason Pearson brush was. I had no idea. You know what I mean? But the whole point is you have to be able to be humble. You have to go after what you want. You have to be confident enough to ask for help. And, being a sponge definitely, helped me transition into obviously where I am today. So.
I love that. And we've all been on our hands and knees scrambling around on the floor at Fashion Week trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But what I'm hearing...
I was going to say, do you just think, though, that like a little bit like social media is to blame for people being scared to fail? Like, everyone sees the win now and they don't see the work.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's like that process that we went through is sort of lost now because everything is so easily like we're weirdly like not celebrities, but like they see us and they're not really seeing.
They only see the end product.
Right.
Yeah.
They only see the end product, but they don't understand 10, 15 years, the 7 years. They're like, oh, I was an assistant for 3-4 years.
Yeah.
It's just there in the corner, and all I did was pack up stuff. I didn't.
No one's showing their failures. Like, so and those embarrassing moments and the moments where Ken's yelling at you 6 times for the right, like no one's posting
for the right brush.
Where's the Mason Pearson, Larry? I'm like that one day randomly out of the blue. PTSD. But it's just like nobody sees that, and they I think also like people just become so scared to fail or and like that's how you learn. Like failure is proof that you tried something, and until you can get there, it's like and to your point, like humble yourself a little bit. It's hard to humble yourself when all you see is the wins. You know?
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and I think that's the thing, right? It's just like you don't know everything. I don't know everything. I have my team, and I'm constantly like, what should I be paying attention to? What's this and that? Because I'm always on this journey to learn, right? And I think that's the thing. Like you're an expert until you're not, and then you're constantly learning to get to that next level, and then you keep going. And then I just think that there isn't any shame in asking questions or being really honest and saying like, I don't know this. I need to learn this.
The fact that you're there and saying you want to learn it is like it's a great thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I do know. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go for it, Larry.
No, I was gonna say I was on a huge advertising job, and they pulled me to I'm working on my talent. You know, she's like number 1 on the call sheet. And then, you know, the producer of the shoot comes over and pulls me to the side and goes, we have a really big issue here. And I'm like, what did I do? You know, and like, no, it has nothing to do with you, but we kind of need your help. We need you to step in. We hired a stylist who doesn't know texture. And you know, we need you to come in because his talent that he's working on is ready to walk off set, and our whole shoot will fall apart if she does that. I'm like, yo, absolutely cool. I asked my talent that I was with, are you cool with this? We got you covered. She was like, absolutely, go make sure sis is okay. Right. So I go, she like, it's a sigh of relief. She's like, whoo, you know, and I obviously was not nasty to the stylist that, you know, was there. And, you know, he actually kind of stood over me and shadowed me and watched how I kind of got down with her, you know, and everything was great. Now, the whole point is when I went and pulled him to the side, I'm like, yo, man, I mean, like, if you need anything, let me know. He was like, I'm so embarrassed. The only reason I took this job is because I needed the money. I knew that I couldn't pull it off, but I needed the money. So, you know, that really opened up my eyes in terms of perspective, because people are saying yes because they just need to put food on their table. So, you know, it's a bigger issue than, you know, get somebody Black in there. I think we have to also look at why, you know, people that really can't do it, why they're saying yes to the jobs in the first place, you know?
Right. Exactly. And I think, you know, what I'm hearing you say is, you know, authenticity and vulnerability are key. If you don't know how to do something, just say it. And let's not perpetuate any trauma on set. But also on the same token, what I heard you say at the start of this little segment, Joanna, is there's also no excuse to not learn. And let me say that louder for people at the back. There is no excuse, right? So on that, Natasha, what are the key things to consider when people on set and in positions like you are that are booking hair and makeup artists?
I mean, there's so many things. I think one, I mean, we definitely go through the agencies, a lot of it's relationships. I know with us, at least on our end, we definitely like to propel up and coming. And so we like to find opportunities to give those that are percolating, or we can see that this person has a spark and they have talent. Let's find some way to utilize them to help them get to that next level, right? But I think it's also, as an executive, you know, I'm one of the exceptions because I immerse myself in this and I work with talent. So therefore it's a part of my job to understand and to know hair, makeup, or fashion, right? Like it's the same concept. Like not everything looks good on everybody. Not everything's going to work for everyone. But those other executives that don't know, I really urge them to educate themselves and to ask the questions, because the information is out there, and not to rely solely on the 2, 3, 5 Black people that are working in your building that you know, but also ask questions. Ask the other hair and makeup stylist when you're on set and you're just like, hey, I know we have a shoot coming up. Do you know how to work with this hair? Do you know how to do this? There's nothing wrong with having those conversations with people that are there. And then you can already start the conversation like, hey, they tell you, I don't know, but I know 2 people that do. Let me get you their information, and you can start the dialogue and at least start walking them through the creative so they have an understanding of what your expectations are. So really, it really is holding on to and opening up to the communication. And again, just as Joanna said, being responsible and accountable for your own education in this new process that we're trying to really establish, because there is no excuse, like we're 2021, everybody's been screaming on the top of their lungs, like this isn't acceptable. So like, you can't say, I didn't know anymore.
Exactly. And to that point, Joanna, you've been really vocal in this space in terms of diversity, in terms of, the importance of representation. How do you navigate your space as a makeup artist and an ally?
Well, okay. So I think like on the macro level, right? It costs me nothing as a white woman to yell about what's wrong, right? And what's messed up in the world, right? No one's going to pull me from a job for saying that was messed up, right? Like, and that's just a responsibility that comes with the privilege that's not going to happen to me, right? So it costs me nothing. Like for me to be loud on Instagram and for me to be on podcasts yelling about it, which I do all the time, like, and I have for years, like I just, it costs me nothing, right? And so, and I believe it. So I say it. I also, I'm very conscious, all of my assistants are of color, primarily Black, and about half and half women, but like, I definitely am conscious of who needs to be pulled into the space. So I'm conscious of that. So that's kind of like the top level of it. On just a kind of a more micro level about it, I had a conversation literally this morning, with my client, who we were just sort of discussing ways to be an activist, because she is one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. Of course, at 6:45 in the morning, I was forcing her to talk about work, but I literally had a conversation with her that went from, it literally like started at Breonna Taylor and ended at the Kamala Harris Vogue cover. And it was this sort of winding conversation. But she helped me sort of like form this thought that's been circling in my head about all of it. And, she pointed out that there are many ways to be an activist, and that it's elitist to say that the only way to be an activist is to be in the streets yelling, rioting, or not rioting, protesting, yelling, screaming, signing petitions, like that's the only way to be an activist. Because, and if that were true, A, everything would be fixed, or like B, nothing would ever be fixed. But like, that's not the only way to be an activist. So there are ways, there are other ways, and you can be an activist just by living, right? I mean, I'm sure both Larry and Natasha, you know that your existence is resistance, right? I'm sure you guys are very familiar with that saying, and you know it, right? Like just going out in the world as a Black person is already resistance. But like as an ally, like what I do is I go into the world, and I'm sure like you, Katrina, like, especially last year when everything sort of really boiled over socially, globally, you sort of this feeling that I've been screaming about and yelling about, people start holding your feet to the fire. What do you do every day to dismantle white supremacy and all these, these questions, these hard questions where you're like, what do I do? And I just think like a lot of it comes from how I navigate work, because I know that we live in a society where women are already not listened to at the rate men are, and Black women are listened to less than white women are. And I know that a lot of people even being responded to or listened to is just based on their appearance. And, you know, we can go on and on about sort of like Eurocentric beauty and how, you know, even like you would, a message might be, we talked about like, what if Breonna Taylor looked like Zoe Kravitz, right? Like how would it have gone different, right? But I think like the responsibility that I take, and this is sort of just my magic and my activism, is I take very seriously how my clients look in the world, because it matters. I think like how Black women look on magazine covers matters. I think how Black women are portrayed in media matters. I want like a white mom in Nebraska who's at the checkout line to like turn and see a magazine and be like, wow, like who is that? The same way like every little Black girl turned for 50 years and saw Marilyn Monroe and Cindy Crawford and all these people and never saw anyone that looked like her. And I think like for young Black girls, like to see like Storm Reed on the cover of InStyle and for them to be like, oh my God, like she looks like me, or all those things. And I think like that's the way that I, you know, like on the micro level am an activist. And it's why I'm vocal when I feel disservices have been done, you know, primarily on magazine covers, and which is like a slippery slope to be like super vocal about on like social media, but definitely like I try to get my points in without sometimes naming names of, you know, people that hire me, but also, you know, it's like, it's a lot of just like, you guys have to do better. And so I don't know, I think, but like it's that weird, it's this, I was concerned that it was a very shallow way to define part of my activism, and she actually reassured me, like, actually that's, everyone has to exist in the world they exist in, and you use what you have to push your activism forward, and just however you move through the world, like it's all about just, it's not about me, it's about we, and how do you exercise that in everything that you do. And for you to be upset about, you know, how certain covers look or things like that, and demand that magazines do that, that's activism. That is your activism. And that's what you take on and help push a narrative forward that can reframe things and reframe how people think and how they see people. And, you know, I just don't want Black women to be invisible, honestly, and because they're not to me, and they shouldn't be to anyone else. And I don't, that's it.
Exactly. So, you know, it's not about me, it's about we, and be active in your activism within your industry and do better.
Absolutely.
Love it. Points taken. Love that. So to summarize, Larry, if you could just give one snippet of advice to stylists that are trying to break through in order for them to be able to do all textures and all complexions, what would that be?
Practice, 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 test, do your research, make sure that you are in front of the game and not left behind in terms of what is popping in the communities. Take yourself out of your comfort zone. You really have to stretch yourself to really be sort of like super versed and well-rounded. And it takes patience, it takes time. I know that people are really used to things that are just happening overnight as it appears on social media. But, you know, in our own worlds and in our own lives, things are a process. You have to take the time and you have to respect the craft enough to know that you have to divulge into getting your skill set up to make sure that you are ready for anything that is thrown at you. You know, I am like a walking beauty supply. I have any and everything that you could potentially think you may want in my kit. And, you know, that saying, it's like, you know, you don't have to get ready because you stay ready. And that's where you have to be, especially in a competitive industry where, you know, everybody is a makeup artist, everybody's a hairstylist, everybody's a fashion, you know, wardrobe stylist, photographer. There's so much competition out there. You really have to make sure that you are on your A game.
Exactly. You know, as a CEO, and you're like really setting your teams up for success, we even had stylists take sewing kits backstage to the award ceremonies, and they were needed. Our stylists were there stitching people and women back into their dresses. You just never know what you're going to need. And I love that. A walking beauty supply. That needs to go in your caption. And to end, Natasha, I mean, again, this is such an important, vital question. What is it truly going to take to end and take away this misconception? I can see you already raising your eyebrows at me. I know it's a biggie, but like, What is it really gonna take to change this perception that Black stylists can only do, texture and darker complexions, and that actually let's rework that and rewire that right now?
Okay, that's like a very layered question, and I think you could take it from 2 points. Because from one side, I can say I've been on sets where there's been no people of color doing hair and makeup, and then you have Black or people of color in the seats, right? So there's a one side of it of like understanding that yes, people of color, Black women, Black men are talented and know how to be in these spaces. So there's like, that's one side of it, of just constantly getting them in front of the door and in front of the people that are making the decisions and booking talent. On the other side, not pigeonholing everybody into these little pockets like, oh, we have a Black style talent, we can only have a Black person do them. That I think is, again, it comes down to the education. It comes down to, when they're looking at a roster of hair, makeup stylists, looking at their portfolio, asking to see like, what are the things that they worked on? I want to see a plethora of that. So there's some diversity, because I think at the end of the day, it's only helpful to, the artists themselves, because that way it does broaden their opportunities to take various jobs. But I think it's gonna be baby steps, to be quite honest. I mean, look, this summit is like one phase of like something that we're trying to like get a wedge into the conversation so people can really start shifting that thought and really being able to say there are resources now, and even to make it easier, we have resources to show you where you can go to find people. So yeah, I think a lot, again, it's being open, it's letting those have opportunities to do other things, and it's going to take a long process. So I guess it's like someone like me who's on the corporate side that has an understanding of it, me telling my peers like, yeah, we do more, right? We can do others, I'm sure there's amazing makeup artists that know how to do visual effects that probably can show a gash, that thing. Like, there's a plethora, but just giving them those opportunities is going to be the work.
Yes,
and vital. And breaking down those thoughts that people have had, I think, for the longest time. So we're chipping away at old processes, old thoughts, old behaviors, and we're going to be chipping for a minute, but we just have to keep going, honestly.
Exactly. And like you just mentioned, that's what this summit is here for. It really is to start chipping away. Yeah. And I believe there's still the rest of the summit to keep going. So as much as I would love to continue this conversation, and I have a funny feeling we could all have this for hours and hours. Larry's over there sipping his wine. We got this. But I guess we should watch the viewers carry on, the audience watching the rest of their summit, and obviously Gabrielle Union. So it has been my honor to speak with you, and thank you so much for sharing your gems, sharing your advice, and coming and, being leaders for the next stage to come through. I so appreciate you.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, and thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Backing out. Spin it by you.